Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah ma ba'd. Brothers and sisters, a very important question. How would you feel if someone hated you so much so that they wanted to harm you? How would you feel about this person or this thing that hates you and they would never leave you alone? Constantly following you everywhere you go. And because it hates you so much, it wants to corrupt your morals and your values and your beliefs. And it may even control the things that you do, the way that you look, the way that you behave, and the things that you should perhaps be doing. It stops you from doing those things because it hates you. It will try take some of your stuff away. It will steal from you. It will corrupt your possessions. It will order you and command you to use those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you through halal means, that you waste it on what is haram, that you waste it on what is sinful, that you waste it on something which is going to devoid any kind of benefit in the possessions, in the thing that you are attaining for yourself, and in your life in general. This enemy, this thing hates you so much, it wants to affect your family life. It wants to affect the way that you behave at home and the way that your friends and your family behave with you. It wants you to be corrupt with one another, become angry with one another, have bad thoughts with one another, so that you split off and you become devoid of any goodness, because this enemy and this thing that hates you so much is devoid of any goodness in itself. It wants you to be full of anger, because this enemy is full of anger towards you. When you come home, he comes inside with you. When you leave the house, he waits for you outside. When you want to eat, he eats with you. When you want to drink, it drinks with you. Whenever you want to sleep, it sits at your head, tying knots over your head. If you want to be intimate with your spouse, it will join in. How would you feel about something else doing all of this in your life? When you want to get changed, when you want to go to the bathroom, if you want to have a shower, it wants to expose your aura, it wants to have a look at you, it wants to expose you, it wants to humiliate you. My brothers and sisters, Allah tells us about Iblis and how evil and despicable this enemy is. After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created him, He created Adam subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah commanded Iblis to make sajda to Adam alayhi salam. But he refused. And out of his own choice he refused. But look what he says. قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. He blames Allah for his deviation. He says, because of you I have become deviated, because of you I have become misguided, and now because of that I'm going to sit and wait for them on the correct path. Just like you deviated me, I'm going to deviate them. This is what Iblis says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah protect us and give us refuge from this evil enemy. ثُمَّ لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ يَدِيهِمْ. I will come in front of them. وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ. And if they turn around, I will come from behind of them. وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ. And I will come from the right of them. وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ. And if they turn left, I will come from the left of them. وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. most of them you will find are not thankful. Iblis, according to one of the tafsirs from the ulama, will come to a person from every single direction because he hates you. But we've just witnessed the month, my brothers and sisters. The Prophet ﷺ said about this month, إِذَا جَاءَ Ramadan, when Ramadan enters, فُتِحَتْ أَبْوَابُ الْجَنَّةِ, the doors of Jannah, فُتِحَتْ, are made wide open. وَغُلِّقَتْ أَبْوَابُ النَّارِ, the doors of the hellfire are sealed, not just locked, but sealed shut. وَصُفِدَتِ الشَّيَاطِينَ, and the shayateen are chained up. Imam al-Qurtubi, rahimahullah, he said they are chained up in order to benefit the person who is fasting. Because the fasting person, if he has his enemy held back from him, he is then able to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any distractions. Without that evil promise from him that he will come to us from every single direction. This is not to say that every kind of shaitan is locked up in the month of Ramadan, but it is to say that their evil and their corruption is reduced. But let's face it, my brothers and sisters, some of us missed him. Some of us were waiting for him to come back. And some of us didn't have him around, but they found themselves not really changing, doing the exact same thing had he not been locked up. And for some of us, my brothers and sisters, we have found the effect of these shayateen being let loose on the day of Eid itself, on the night of Eid itself. The barakah is not the same. Our routine is not the same. Our mentality is not the same. Our energy is not the same. Our connection to Allah is not the same. This time last week, we were asking Allah to have afu upon us and asking for Allah's Jannah. How many of us are fasting? How many of us are reciting Quran? How many of us are standing the nights in prayer? How many of us have continued with that level of connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how many of us have been affected by the release of shaitan? Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, worship is anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. If it is a good deed, it's an act of worship. If it is a good deed, it's an act of worship. However, worship has 4 parts to it. So the person doing the good deed must have 4 components in and of himself, and that then defines his Islam. It defines his ikhlas, it defines his taqwa. He needs to have the love of Allah and seek the love of Allah. He needs to have hope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and hope for his Jannah. He needs to have a fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he doesn't want to disobey him or attain his wrath and his punishment. And the 4th thing that he mentioned, rahimahullah, is that the person has an internal belief of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 4 things define what worship is: love, hope, fear, submission. He went on to say, rahimahullah, in a person's normal state, you will find people submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, part of Tawheed is to have a fear of consequences if that submission is removed. So part of fear is that you have a fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you have a fear of His punishment. But part of that fear also are the consequences that a person fears for himself falling into if he removes submission from his life. So all four of these, they complement one another, they support one another. They cannot stand alone. So submission has to come with fear. So because he has submission, and because he has that fear, and obviously because he has love of Allah and hope to attain His Jannah and His mercy and His pleasure, he becomes wary of shaitan. Because shaitan wants you to forget Allah, and he wants to feed into you a false sense of hope. Ibn Taymiyyah went on to say, rahimahullah, therefore part of La ilaha illallah, the word of Tawheed, the word of Iman, is to have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will accept you and He will accept your deeds and He will give you Jannah. But be careful, be wary of shaitan. Because what he will try and do is he will try and remove that hope from you. Look how he's mentioned shaitan twice. Shaitan will try and put false ideas and a false sense of security into you. But also be wary of shaitan because he may actually appear to you and make it seeming to you that your good deeds and your tawheed and your iman is not good enough. It is likely as well that he will make you fear and become depressed and despair from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaitan will make you think that the way of your life as a Muslim is not fulfilling. Perhaps is boring, perhaps is not giving you anything. Therefore Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ends by saying that the greatest weapon that a person, the believer, can ever be given is the weapon of tawakkul, to depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And depending on Allah entails having ikhlas of Him and taqwa of Him. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, you have witnessed an extremely important blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the month of Ramadan. But when the month of Ramadan leaves you, the enemy is released again. But that doesn't mean that love and hope and fear and submission in the life of a Muslim ceases. The Lord of Ramadan remains. And the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues. We have now entered into Shawwal, which is a month of haram with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next month, Dhul Qa'dah, is a month of haram with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The month after that is the month of Hajj, which is a month of haram as well, the sacred months, Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, until we have another Eid, until we have another 10 days, just like we've had 10 days in Ramadan. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, the message today is to make us all aware that our iman goes up and it goes down. And after Ramadan, we can feel it for some of us. And for some of us, we will fall into a sense of sadness because we can feel the shaitan coming back into society, perhaps even into our lives. But don't despair. Carry on, because the way of the believer, as Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah has said, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for the believer a great deal of goodness. And it is in that goodness that we have hope in Him, that He has accepted our deeds, He has accepted us, and He has made us from the people of Jannah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us all tawfiq and success, and that He protects us and remains with us, close to us, preserving us until we meet Him. هذا والله أعلم وصلى اللهم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.